to Dave Hazelhurst, our friend Dave Hazelhurst, who you know.
Yep.
And we had a chat at the social recruiting days last week, early this week. And we talked about just being knackered and being on the road and all this. And he came up with a brilliant idea. Basically, look, he said, Hung, you need to defragment your brain. And you know when your computer's like running out of RAM and you need to defragment. And I just thought, you know what, man, that's exactly what I need. I need some service that comes in and defragments my brain because it doesn't work properly anymore.
Well, is that not meditation? Is that not what that's for?
Yeah, I think so. It would be meditation, exercise, some sort of way to get out of my zone. Because my kind of experience over the last 2 months has just been like a times 10 of what it normally is, which is a lot of interrupts, lots of people making demands, requests, etc. And you're trying to deal with all of them. You can't. So you end up having to make priority judgments and all this type of stuff. And eventually you just get exhausted by it all. And you want to crawl up into a little ball and, get under a duvet. And I actually bought a duvet today. So I wonder whether that's subliminally, a requirement to retreat into the safety of that. But anyway, defragmentation of the brain. I started exercising today, stopped the traveling, which is fantastic. Really had a great time. But now business as usual, I think, for the rest of the year, which I'm actually really excited about. So anyway, we are live. So welcome, everybody, to Brainfood Live on Air. This is episode 36. Adam, we've actually got 36 episodes this year. I think we should be very proud of ourselves. And I am joined by my co-pilot who has returned to the saddle, Adam Gordon. Great to see you back, Adam. I have missed you, I hate to say it, but I have missed you in the co-pilot seat.
Yeah, I think you get to understand when you're doing this with somebody every week, you kind of get to understand how they think and what they're going to respond to. And, there's a rapport that you build up. And when you're doing it with new people, that's great. You get new thinking and stuff. But there's no place like home.
Indeed. I feel like I've been unfaithful for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or what it is. I've played the field and I've come back to Old Faithful. But anyway, it is good to see you, and you've got loads of news as well. We'll catch up on that very quickly. But you've got new releases out, new CRM, it seems. I mean, I haven't even checked it out because I've been away. But tell us a little bit more about this thing.
Yeah, we after 18 months of blood, sweat, and tears, we've relaunched our product, and it's miles easier to use. Recruiters can build their own nurture campaigns and do their own automated candidate nurturing. We launched free recruitment CRM, which is available at freerecruitmentcrm.com, because a lot of companies had said that what you're offering is brilliant, but I can't just put it straight on top of my ATS. I think I need CRM first. We were like, not sure you do, but fine. We'll just build some extensions to our own product, and then you can just slot it on top. And we've got like 85 requests for free recruitment CRM in the first week. So they'll all be getting their instance in about 7 or 8 days. And yeah, there's lots of cool, fun things happening.
So it's free, I presume.
Yeah.
You've made a commitment because I can see the domain. It's like it's free in the domain. But how are you going to make money out of it? Are you is it a premium service or something like that, or what's the deal?
Well, we expect people to sign up for it and go, this is great. It's like a pad of names that's online, and it's a bit better than my Excel spreadsheet. But really, how do these guys make money? Okay, it's all about talent pipeline automation. What's that? Mm-hmm. And then they come and look at, actually, what do I really need if that's free? And then they go, shit, I need talent pipeline automation. So HubSpot did it very effectively. Lots of businesses do it. Slack do it. Loads of companies do it. Pipedrive does it.
All right. Well, listen, I might have to use it myself because little do people know, but recruiting Brainfood is in dire need of some sort of CRM. Because right now it's just me on an email, and doing kind of re-engagement and stuff like that is really tough. So yeah, I mean, and now that I'm back in the saddle, I'll definitely give this a whirl, and see how we go.
You get it. You'll like it.
But yeah, good job on it, man. I mean, well done on doing a little bit of a pivot and pushing this new thing out. Be excited to see it. Okay, great. What else has been going on? Let's just talk about recruiting Brainfood, man. Last week, did you read it? I mean, I've been away, so I feel like you've been slacking off, Adam. I don't know. Have you read the last issue?
Well, I mean, I think I can prove that I haven't, because I do a review of your Brainfood every week and post it on LinkedIn. And it's the most engaged post I put on LinkedIn every week is, here's my summary of what's in Brainfood this week.
That's amazing that you do like a meta curation of the curation of Brainfood, right? So you condense it even further. So it's like literally the liqueur of recruiting Brainfood.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we were talking about before we went live, my favorite article, which I think you said was the best downloaded this week, was about indistractability. And that being, this is the number one skill humans need in the future, is the ability to focus. It's not even focus, is it? It's
no.
It's actually different from focus, because it's about being able to filter out things rather than focus on. It's about being able to stop other things from getting in your way.
Yeah. And you know what? The author of this post, a guy called Nia Eyal, I think he's a productivity coach. And he kind of, we've been chatting on Twitter, a bit more or less just exchanging a few retweets and stuff like this, because he was aware of people in Brainfood sharing this article around. So it was super popular. And I think the reason why the Brainfood is really like this is not only because of the message that Nia was sending, but he also gives you at the end like a framework to get there. He's not saying, hey, this is the skill. He's saying, look, and here are steps A, B, C, D, E to get to where you need to be. So definitely have a read of that. I've shared that in the link right there, which is fantastic. And thanks also for Elena to sharing that book as well. And it's actually inspired the topic of our chat, because we wanted to talk about implementation of EB today in a similar kind of way. Like, can we give people a step-by-step workflow to get there, because we all agree it's a good idea, but let's help people practically get there. But anyway, I would recommend everyone check out those links that's shared in the chat stream there. Really good post. Okay, what else was interesting last week, Adam?
Well, there was an article which reminded me of my gran, because she had a very, very posh voice, but she came from Springburn, which is a part of Glasgow where nobody has a posh voice. Right. She walked nicely, she dressed nicely, and everybody asked her how, she got sent to a kind of quasi-finishing school when she was a kid.
Yep.
And it sounds like this article is that EY are doing that to their female employees, telling them how to act around men and telling them how to dress for the part and stuff like that. I don't know how true this is, but it seems like an anachronism if it is.
You know what? I just shared the link in HuffPo there. It's actually a bit of a historical event, because I think this happened in 2018 or whatnot, and it's been resurfaced, reheated, and cycled back again, much to EY's kind of dismay, I suspect. But the context of it is basically they got an external consultant in to give advice or coaching to EY professionals, and they presented this course, which included a lot of these recommendations for female members of the team, which is, look, this is how you progress. And of course, a lot of the content of the course, in the cold light of day, looks a little bit, oh my goodness, how archaic is this? And of course, it just kicked off all kinds of scandal online. There was lots of conversations on various Facebook groups about this. And of course, everyone's hammering it. And I would just recommend people read it with a sort of view. But actually, the most interesting thing for me was not necessarily the content, because I think we can all kind of agree the content is a little bit problematic. But more about like who's responsible for it, because I can understand that EY gets a lot of opprobrium for this, but at the same time, I can also see a scenario where they have not seen the course material before it was delivered. They just brought somebody in. I've been brought in to consult people. They haven't scrutinized my deck, and I've just given the deck. So I just wonder whether, where does the responsibility lie here, and does the opprobrium need to flow entirely towards EY? Obviously, they need to improve their processes in future. I'm sure they will do. But at the same time, let's not forget, it's like an external coach or an external business that came in to present this, rather than it being 100% endorsed by EY. So it reminds me a little bit of the social media chat that we all often see. You know, obviously we know that Facebook gets hammered and what have you for hosting content of various types. I'm very vocal and probably quite provocative online as in defense of Mark Zuckerberg and his wonderful Facebook platform. But primarily it is because I don't think that he is necessarily as responsible as people make the claim of. I mean, it's basically a platform where 2 billion people have right access to. You're going to get a lot of stuff in there that he would probably personally not approve, but it's not catchable. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of this EY thing. Yes, the course content is problematic. I think we can all agree on that. Yes, they could have done a better job in scrutinizing quality control, all the rest of it. I'm sure they would deeply regret not doing so. But I can also see at a very local level, it might happen in one event, small local office, whatever it is, you know, isolated group of people, it could have happened and it has happened and it slipped through. So, you know, is that necessarily something we should throw you know, EY under the bus for? I'm not entirely sure. Anyway,
well, I worked at, for 3 years, I worked at another Big Four accountancy firm. I can't mention the name because I'm not allowed to say anything I did there. It's a non-disclosure when you leave. But I think you'd know what it was if you went to my LinkedIn profile. Anyway, there was a, I remember doing a kind of evening session, and it was kind of meant to be a bit of fun, but it was around how to dress for success. And somebody came in and like did explain, and it was split up. Absolutely. It was like 20% of it was for guys and 80% of it was for the females in the office. So, you know, these kind of things do happen. I'm just not, or they did happen. This is like 2000. Yeah, I'm not sure that they're just not appropriate anymore.
No, I don't think you can do it anymore. This sounds like it's outdated, and it sounds like, you know, in your era, whenever you were at that business, probably what 10, 15 years ago, it was maybe standard to do this. Because let's face it, Big Five, Big Four consultancy, they all look the same. You know, they've been coached in some way, or at least have kind of adopted social norms. People aren't wearing far out clothing; they're kind of identical. Even to the LinkedIn profiles, I've seen some of those, you know, they've literally we'll talk about the branding side on lack of authenticity a bit later, but they've obviously been given instructions on how they are meant to appear. So
almost everybody at KPMG has got a blue background on their LinkedIn profile.
Right.
Almost everybody at Grant Thornton has got a black and white photo.
Right.
The other thing I was just going to say, sorry, this was not in the brain food, but something that is worth mentioning about what you just said around Zuckerberg. I really, really appreciated Jack Dorsey banning political advertising on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I said this a couple of months ago online. Political advertising and political influencing should be absolutely banned on social media, especially the way that, you know, it's been used on Facebook, and it's like created freak results in various elections that we all know about. It's just got no place on social media, and I don't think it's right. And I'm glad that Twitter has taken the first step towards this with banning political advertising.
You know what? I think basically the comment you've made there is more or less widely supported, and I think you can see that on the chat stream here, which is fair play. Again, I take a defensive posture to this because I agree that malign political influence, that's we've seen it in UK, US politics, European politics, lots of foreign actors in there. Very easy to do as well, sadly enough. But I've got a little bit of a problem with overly appraising Jack Dorsey for this, because I think political advertising on Twitter is far smaller slice of the pie than it is on Facebook, and I think far less influential. Facebook definitely, I mean, both ad tech businesses, we get that. I'd be interested to see how Zuckerberg changes his posture on there. The pressure is overwhelming for him to shift to this. But I think the problem wouldn't be solved even if he did do that. And the reason why is how do we determine what is a political advert? You might ban political organizations from sending adverts, which is fantastic. But there's two problems with that. Number one, why don't you extend that ban to broadcast media? US in particular, a lot of the money being raised is being pumped directly into hit ads online, sort of on TV. Why is Facebook held to a higher standard when it's not, in my opinion, even a media business?
Because the TV can't direct a personalized advert into your living room, whereas Facebook can.
I agree with that analysis, but I also disagree that that doesn't necessarily follow that you should ban it. I mean, micro-targeting. This is now turning into a philosophical debate, but I mean, maybe something worth exploring. But this is the reason is personalization bad? Micro-targeting ultimately is understanding what this person inherently likes. And if you send an advert which stimulates what that person likes or not, is that so bad compared to broadcasting a huge advert out to everyone? We haven't answered. I don't think we've answered that question effectively. A lot of the marketing sort of stuff that we do, a lot of recruiting stuff that we do, man, a lot of the work that you do when you talk about CRM is about personalization. So if personalization is ipso facto bad, then actually a lot of our businesses are in the wrong side of the moral line there. But I don't think it is. I really don't. I think that the problem we have is we're dealing with new communication tech. It shocked our current political systems. The current political systems and the media messaging before social media was still terrible. I mean, let's not forget, none of this has emerged purely as a result of Facebook. Rupert Murdoch has had a huge, in my opinion, negative impact in the politics of at least three countries, should I say. And that's been decades prior to social media. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're piling into social media when we've left broadcast media well alone. And the main reason why I'm a big defender of social tech generally is because I think at least you can contest the argument in social media. If someone says something I don't like, I can say something about it and make that public. Whereas if I'm imbibing something from Rupert Murdoch, I've got no voice. But anyway, I can see that.
Did you see the show about? Did you see the show about on Netflix about Roger Ailes?
I did
the loudest voice in the room, all about Fox News. Oh, geez.
I don't want to. I mean, I'll watch it, but I have to say, I think we've got all of these things. We're in a very interesting time in terms of where politics lies, where communication lies. How do we all deal with it? I think the bottom line is no one's very happy. But I just wonder whether we sometimes are grasping for the wrong solutions sometimes. Anyway, we will talk again about this topic. One more thing before we move on to our wonderful guest and talk about employer branding, Adam.
Yeah, okay. I've got 5 here. So I'm going to select one. I'm going to select one.
Quick, if you want.
The one is, because I'm really interested in this, is does manufacturing matter?
Right.
And so the UK, very interestingly, the UK is absolutely, it's gone like plunged, it's accelerated further and further into being knowledge economy. Far less gets made here than it ever has done. Interestingly, the USA, there's still a lot gets made there. So it's not on the same trajectory as we are. And so you can include a variety of countries in Western Europe in this as well, including the Netherlands, very much a knowledge economy. Germany still remains very big manufacturing centers. And does it matter? Does it matter? I don't know. We've got, you make more profit out of your ideas than actually making things.
Well, that's the route that we went down. I mean, when Thatcher, Big Bang, the Reaganomics and all the rest of it, they recognize actually it's a lot cheaper and more profitable to make money through banking and services because there's literally very little hard capital you need to throw down to start that business. You just need to kind of be in the middle of the information flows, which is why we've kind of turned into a very financialized economy, which is why London has become such a massive magnet for the talent, for the money and all the rest of it, and caused all of these regional disparities, which, we're now kind of certainly, the chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak. So all of this is now coming to play. 20, 30 years, even 40 years after this type of economic decision making has occurred. But the interesting point about this post, which I've just shared in the chat stream there, is the guy, by the way, I'm really very keen to know a little bit more about this this power couple, I call them, because the guy's wife, Nicolas Cotin's wife, a lady called Laetitia Fideau, I think is one of the best writers and thinkers about the future of work going on right now. Writes in French and in English, lives in the UK. It was actually her husband that wrote this article, and obviously they're in the same kind of in the same type of discipline. But what Nicholas was saying in this post was saying, hey, why do we love manufacturing? Like, why are certain industries considered to be better than others, especially when they've got, like, we all think fishermen's amazing. You know, we all need to protect the fishermen. We all need to protect farming. All of this kind of iconic types of work. Whereas, in fact, if you look at it from sort of the economic contribution point of view, you know what, accountants do more for the economy, let's say, but no one loves them. So what is it about the type of work? What are the features of this work that make a difference? Is it, for instance, the fact that it's involving creation of tangible products? Is it that it is about the labor theory of value, so to speak? You have to put a lot of physical labor in to do this stuff. Therefore, we value it more. Who knows? But he asks a very pertinent question. You know, why do we care about this stuff when economically it may not be relevant?
Yeah, we do like things that we can hold in our hand. My dad used to run a brewery, and I absolutely loved going into a pub and seeing people really enjoying that beer. And, you know, the manufacturing process around that is something that most people don't think about very much. But it's about the end product, isn't it? It's about having something that you use or you consume. There is something magical about that. Yep,
I think there's probably something really evolutionary about it. It's less abstraction, isn't it? When you're talking about a service or an idea, it's quite abstract, the value that you receive from it. If you've taken home an item or you've consumed something and it made you immediately feel something, then perhaps it's just closer to our evolutionary roots, I guess. But yeah, very interesting question to pose, and big questions for us going forward in the future, right? I mean, you know, if we continue to go down ideas and knowledge economy, then what does that mean for us? Do we continue to devalue that in comparison to manufacturing and manual labor, which, you know, we can see might continue to recede? So really interesting brain food. All right. Yep. Anyway, what else? Or do we go? We should go straight up. Go on, one more.
I really want to get into the topic, but one other quick thing about that. If I think about my customers and I think about what they're trying to recruit and they're creating talent pipelines for, it's salespeople, it's software engineers, it's product managers, it's marketing people. It's very, very rarely people who are actually making something. It's R&D people, so I guess they're kind of in a manufacturing process, like FMCG and things like that. But it's very rare that it's people who are actually involved in the making of the thing.
Yeah, the demand isn't there, but the romanticism is. This idea, the work is kind of like, what's Lee said?
Yeah, Lee said he did point out US manufacturing is in decline, and it has been for years. So that is true. It just hasn't happened nearly as fast as it did in the UK. But I think that the other thing is that the USA is almost like a continent on its own. And so I think being part of the EU may have accelerated the UK's move to being a knowledge economy. And the other thing is that Trump's trade embargo with China is something that will help to keep manufacturing going a little bit longer in the USA.
That's debatable. That's debatable whether that is the case, because putting a tariff on foreign imports doesn't necessarily trigger a revival of industry. Just makes everything more expensive.
I'm not saying it's a smart thing. By the way, just on that, I take it you haven't been on the Converse website looking at your customized trainers that I was going to get you.
For people who don't know, we have a private bet, which is actually one way. So I win and win either way. But Adam's going to give me a pair of Converse trainers if the UK doesn't Brexit. But the UK is going to Brexit. So at some point, I'm not going to get these trainers. But anyway, we've got our
maybe
own
not in our lifetime. Yeah, maybe not in our lifetime.
It'll happen. It'll happen in a couple of months. We will figure it out in a couple of months. Anyway, fascinating chat as it is, but let's dive into the topic because this is the reason why people might have signed in. We're talking about employer branding, folks. Employer branding, basically, we had a quick chat about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago when we talked about what is the future of employer branding. But today we wanted to kind of take it into a little bit more of a practical context in the implementation side. So we decide, okay, we're going to do this. How do you do it? What is the flow? What is the process? So I'm delighted to say we've got some guests to bring on, and I'm going to bring them on simultaneously. So this is not how we usually do it, but you know what? We're going to change it up. James Ellis, let's see if he is there. Director of Employer Brand at Universum, couldn't have a better CV. And I think Elena, I think that is you, Elena Valentine. I'm going to bring Elena on as well, who is the CEO of a startup called Skill Scout, I believe, which is there to help project employer brand, I think. Good Lord,
you look great today.
You know what, I was worried there for a moment, James. I thought, what the hell is that? Does he know that this goes out at tea time? And
you let me. We were stuck here for 25 minutes trying to argue with you, and you all talked about Brexit, and we don't know anything about Brexit. So
you just need to know it's a shit show, man.
It sucks. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. Anyway, James, great to see you there, man, and great to see you as well, Elena. I wonder, actually, before we kick off, could you introduce yourself so people who might not know you? James, go ahead.
Sure. I'm James Ellis, employer brand nerd bomber. I've got a podcast that's now getting into its 4th year, if I can believe it, called The Talent Cast. So if you like hearing the sound of my voice, have I got the podcast for you. Anyway, I've done like employer branding from every perspective. I've done in-house, I've done agency, I've done consulting. So currently I'm at Universum, where I talk about data-driven employer brands, and I will stop talking about that now.
Can I tell you when I really liked your voice best?
Oh boy. Yeah.
It was on Shiny Happy People and Near Wild Heaven.
Oh God. You know, it's funny. The Michael Stipe jokes are pretty funny because he's like half the size I am, and one day I endeavor to be that small. So I'll take it. I will totally take it.
You know what, James, you do look a little bit like Mr. Stipe, and I'm sure you get these jokes all the time. I just want you to know I've never played that joke with you because I'm very familiar with how old these things get, so I've avoided it. But yeah,
Hung, you can always joke with me. You have full permission.
Thank you very much. And Eleanor, before we get to you, I just want to say, anybody who wants to check out a really awesome podcast, I've just shared the talentcast.com right there in the chat stream. You know what? The reason why I really like this is simply because I think it's one of the hardest formats to do, because James does kind of a complete monologue, like a one-man show into the mic. Mm-hmm. I have no idea how it's possible to do that.
Oh, it's easy. It's for 20 minutes. No one gets to interrupt me. So it's perfect.
I'd stumble. I would totally stumble over that. But anyway, it's an example of the art. So check it out. Talentcast, thetalentcast.com. Okay, Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Elena. I am a workplace filmmaker. So I eat, sleep, breathe the stories of the workplace. And so I've been a job nerd for as long as I can remember and have been able to build a business around it. So basically, our role is to help people make more meaningful connections in the workplace with the power of story and video. And this really all started because of our work with young people several years ago who lacked access and exposure to jobs. And you cannot be what you cannot see. And job descriptions don't show what a job is like. And so when we took a step back, we realized that there was a power in video, there was a power in storytelling, and initially getting young people excited about the world of work. But obviously we have, grown since then. It's about making workplace communications more human and more connected. And so that's really been kind of our main calling. And interestingly, speaking of manufacturing, we built this business on the shoulders of small to mid-sized manufacturing. So, we have tool and die makers and CNC machinists of the Midwest to thank for our initial growth and for our insights for these traits. But have now, I think, really had the privilege of working with some of the biggest brands: McDonald's, Dyson, Thermo Fisher, American Airlines. So it really goes to show that all companies, large or small, regardless of industry, have really unique stories to tell and are using those to really connect, be it candidates or employees in their own work.
And I'm going to jump in because if you don't know her videos, she really does elevate. It's a love letter to work. It's a love letter to the concept of what it means to have a job. And if you can make spraying down cabinets look poetic, I mean, imagine what she can do for whatever the hell it is you do all day. So just putting that out there.
Well, no, I mean, but to actually talk about it, so everyone, if they haven't heard of a guy named Studs Terkel, he wrote a really revolutionary book called Working. He is a Chicago infrastructure. I'm board-bred Chicago. And in the 1960s, 70s, he took a recorder all around the U.S. to just have people talk about their stories of work. And so we really think about the kind of what we're doing. What I would manifest is to be the modern-day Studs Terkel with a camera.
Yeah, you know what? That sounds like because I come from an anthropological background, and it sounds like this person is an ethnographer of work, which is fantastic. And actually, a lot about what you're doing as well, Elena, is exactly that as well. It's like trying to tell the story of how people work, and coming from that direction. Aside, it's not coming necessarily from a marketing kind of a value set. It's coming from a completely different value set.
It's coming from the value set of discovery. And so you said it exactly. So Abby and I were former design researchers. So the whole design thinking thing, that's how we were professionally raised. But that's exactly what you're talking about. The idea is to come from it less of marketing, but more from place of discovery, more from positioning employees as experts. So that when you're coming into it, you should expect the surprises.
Okay, so what I'm going to need you to do is share one of those videos in the stream there, so that people can check it out at their leisure. So if you could do that, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
And what I want to do here is, because employer branding is one of those topics that
here we go.
No, it's huge. It's so big, and people kind of more or less everyone is on board in terms of the general direction that we need to tell the story better.
Lee isn't. Lee Candiotti isn't.
Is he not happy with that?
No, absolutely not. He thinks it's totally worthless. Although he has made a joke here about it being his favorite subject to criticize.
Okay, I mean, we can't have Lee take over the show, even though Lee is amazing as a commentator and as a contributor to this, and we need to get him on the show actually at one point. But just to deal with this one more time, Lee, if you could just type in, like, why do you think EEB is BS? I mean, if that's the case, then let's hear it. Like, why do you think that is?
Fighting words, James.
And I'm going to tell you right now, whatever he answers, it's based on a misguided understanding of what employer brand is. I think anybody, and I've said this many times, many presentations, anybody who talks about or sells employer brand, it doesn't start by defining the damn thing, is trying to grab you by the ankles and shake the money out of your pockets. And there have been plenty of companies, and I will not name names, who just say, this company is all about making your employer brand work. This company is all about, it's a service, it's a software package, and they're all trying to make you see the world of EB through a tiny straw, and none of it's true. It's about something very simple. Everybody has an understanding of what it's like to work at your company, whether it's Candidate ID or IBM or Facebook or whatever. They have a sense of it. There's just, if you don't believe that, then you don't understand how the human brain works. And well, honestly, you're going to have your own podcast. But if you buy that simple idea, where do they get that understanding? Do they get it by the ad? Do they get it by the job posting? Yes, but they also get it from a million other places. And if you don't see that, if you don't see how that particular tapestry is being woven together, and think about, if I can make that tiny change and I can make this little adjustment, if I could stop people talking about how great my product is or how bad my product is or whatever it is, you are managing an employer brand. It's not about job posting. It's not about Glassdoor responses. It's not about ads. It's not about videos. I love you, Elena. It's not about career sites. It's not about any of that. It's about all of that and how you leverage all those pieces to tell a story about who you are that other people go, yeah, or conversely, no, I'm good. That's employer brand.
See, this is why you should sign up to Talent Cast because you get a lot of this stuff from James. Brilliant unscripted monologue, man. But okay, listen. We're talking about practical stuff, right? So we have a young person coming into a business. Let's say, I don't have to be young, but let's say a new person coming into an organization, and they recognize they need to do something about their employer brand. Do you have any idea what the workflow is? I started a conversation on LinkedIn today from a position of ignorance, which I'm comfortable to do. And I had a lot of decent responses from people saying, no, Hung, you do it this way, and what have you. And there seems to be a flow. So I want to try and get to a flow. What is step one? This person, if we imagine him, comes into the new company. He knows employer brand is a problem. What's the first thing he needs to do?
Yeah, is there really a flow? Or do you just kind of walk in and say, where are the problems and stop the bleeding, or figure out where's the interesting part? Like when you start a video, you don't walk in and say, okay, everybody, step one is everybody tells me X and Y and Z. You look, right? You start by going, what's up?
Hold on. I've got a question.
Oh, no.
I assume we are all agreed here. It is impossible to create an employer brand.
Yeah.
True.
Employer brand already exists.
It's
even if
revealed. It's revealed and then it's managed. So you can be massaged, it can be spun a little bit, and I don't like spinning too much. I don't think that's really useful. But the reason people work somewhere is, you have that process of candid experience, if you want to call it that, even though I'm a little fuzzy on that. It's about, you had that process of what you thought this job was going to be when you walked in the door. And if you fast forward a year from now, do you still remember what that thought process was? It's kind of like being married to someone. You love them when they're dating, and you loved them when they're cool and interesting and everything's new. A year down the road, do you remember why you like that person? That's really what it's about. Sometimes it's about reminding you, it's like, look, we're here because of this. We're here to change the world. We're here to make a lot of money. We're here to tell a great story. We're here to support each other. We're here to do something. And if you don't remind people what that's all about and kind of get at the core of that and tell that story over and over and over again, people forget and they drift away. They go, oh, it's like when you're dating and you're like, oh, he or she seems more interesting. And you just kind of wander away without, you just kind of forget. So employer branding is revealed. It already exists, but it needs to be packaged and reminded over and over and over again.
Okay, let me step in here then, guys. Basically, let's assume this is correct. That basically, you got to discover what the brand already is, and then see whether you can modify it or cultivate it in a certain way. What is the process of discovery? I mean, walking around is great, but how else?
Ask the ethnologist.
She's the pro. What do we need to do here?
Yeah, I mean, so in my eyes, again, I've just seen this work. Essentially, it's design thinking. It's very much ethnography. So the first thing is going to be seeing and experiencing. So some of this could come out to just be silent observation. It could be shadowing someone. A lot of it is showing and telling. So it's about coming in with no particular bias, knowing that you're expecting surprises. So for example, what this might look like on a manufacturing shop floor, right? Because I'm on manufacturing, as an HR person is saying, okay, I really need to kind of understand what's the feel like on the floor. So I'm going to get out of my armchair and I'm going to go out there for a week and shadow various different people, understand their roles, and say nothing first and make observations. And there's going to be a lot of insights around that. So that's kind of the seeing and experience. And from there, what you're going to see is, all right, so what is the typical kind of journey of this part of this role, right? Understanding their different processes and mapping that, and then finding this is a challenge, that's a challenge. Right. And it could be things like there's a particular process that's taking this longer. But inevitably, what we end up doing is doing that in the same way for our organizations. So let's think about the world of our onboarding and finding out literally from day one, what's the experience of this worker for the next 3 months. So once you can kind of put together that journey map, it's looking at it and saying, all right, we see that these are the problems. We've talked to everyone to see that these are the problems. And what one would do if they were kind of going through the more design thinking exercises is actually involving those stakeholders, not just the leaders, but the actual workers themselves, to help redesign what that process could be.
Yeah.
And so for employer branding, it would be very similar, of defining the issues, helping to redesign it so that it speaks to their experience. And then inevitably, it's capturing that experience. Maybe it's putting it on video, maybe it's creating the brand messaging, but one that is truthful and authentic to the experience of the actual workers.
And you can actually expand that. You can start to look at what are all the words people use over and over and over again? What are the language they use? What is the vernacular, the lexicon of the space? That's, as much about the office and the people as it is about the sign on the side of the building, as the letterhead. It's as much about what's the process of a day-to-day, what does it feel like to be there? What do people see from the outside? What do people see when they get inside? It's a very wide net. And a lot of times you're just kind of going, what jumps out at you? And there is obviously a process you bake into it. So you're not just a penny on or a BB on a plate where you're just rolling from place to place. You do have to go, look, I'm looking for either signs of trouble or signs of strength or commonalities or whatever that is. You're just looking for something to jump out at you. And then that's why some places, and that some places come in with kind of a framework to kind of keep you in bounds so that anybody can get closer faster. But I think anybody who keeps their eyes open, you see amazing stuff.
But here's where it gets messed up for folks.
Yeah.
One is people hate to be in ambiguity for too long, right? So they're like, oh my God, I'm doing way too much research and I'm getting overwhelmed, for one. And second, people then want to immediately jump to solutions.
Yes.
That's typically the biggest issue, is realizing that, one, these solutions cannot come from you. If you're really trying to build an authentic employer brand, it has to come from the CNC machinist and it has to come from the tool and die maker.
Actually, I would say there's even an overlap because you can't really read the label from inside the jar. You have to say, this is what their experience is, but I'm capturing it from the outside because a candidate is likely coming from the outside. But if you're trying to hire another CNC or a developer, you want to use their language so that you're connecting the dots. You're not just saying, it's a great place to work. Here's my favorite. This is a great place to work because it's impactful. What we do is impactful, but every company says that. So what does that mean to a developer, to a machine learning person, to a machinist or whatever? How does that translate into something meaningful where it's not just like a blah, 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 blah?
Okay,
Adam, go ahead.
I'm going to stop for a second and ask a question. So I'm going to give an opinion while I'm asking this question. Why is it that we have distinct employer branding teams who are not completely connected to employee engagement and internal communications people? Because they absolutely have to do exactly the same job. What you communicate internally about why it's great to work there, which doesn't really happen very much. It needs to be the same message as you're getting external, especially as we get to an age where big companies have got smaller and smaller core permanent employee groups, and they've got much more transient workforces. They should be communicating in exactly the same way with people that are on payroll today as those people who are not. Why are employer branding teams distinct sitting in recruitment and not totally connected to employee engagement and internal?
That's why there's a movement of the cult brands. That's why there's a movement of companies now who absolutely see that there is no difference between employer brand and the marketing brand, and are very much working in line to do that. So if you think about North Face as a part of this.
I'm not talking about the marketing brand. I'm talking about the internal brand.
But you are, because they're all integrated. The corporate brand, the consumer brand, the investor brand, the employer brand, the candidate brand, all those things are wrapped up around a core set of ideas of why this company exists and what it's like to be here. Now you look at that through a lens of an employer or a candidate or an investor or a customer, and that's how you get campaigns and taglines and all that stuff, but they have to align. You can't say we're a pet company store, but by the way, we have a thing back there where we're euthanizing pets. How could you possibly say that? You can't be so disaligned, you go schizophrenic. It's got to be connected. Now you have to make it connect to that audience. So, I mean, I think that's
the quick win, the quick win, the one that there's no excuse for not doing, is connecting internal comms and employee engagement with employer branding. The connecting to the cult brand thing, absolutely, I get that. That's something that's a bit more of a challenge for all sorts of reasons. It's a challenge in B2B versus B2C and various other things. But the feeling that somebody gets doing the job.
Now I understand your question.
A year in, 3 years in, should be exactly what they thought as a candidate the first time, and a candidate when they come back to work for the company again 5 years later. It should be a completely connected experience and feeling.
And that's why employer branding is such a great challenge. It's a great job because effectively you are trying to influence every piece of the business, the candidate experience, the recruiting, the hiring managers, the leadership, the policies of, is there maternity care or not? All the different pieces of it should be aligned, but the employer brand has zero power to actually make those things happen. So their job, on some level, being siloed is almost an advantage because they have no direct control, because if you directly control it, you just focus on that. By being out of control, you learn to influence all pieces. But your point is absolutely well taken. It's not a put it over here on a shelf and just let it do its thing. It is part of the DNA of a company.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, I think what you're talking about is it's the retention piece in all of this. It's not just about the recruiting and making this something that people would want to work, for. It's how do we continue to keep them engaged and maintain a consistent experience throughout their time there.
Which is a good
maybe. Although I think retention means different things in different organizations, and there's a lot of businesses where their workforce ebbs and flows, and retention isn't really an issue. They're not bothered about that. It's about when the person comes back 6 months later, and then they come back 2 years later, and then they come back and they continue to work on different projects or different contracts or whatever it might be.
You're saying the same thing. You're seeing two different sides of the same coin. I think that's completely true. But I would like to kind of segue this conversation into some of the more tactical stuff, because I think one of the things, because the four of us could literally do a roadshow where we do 4 hours of the big picture of what is employer brand and why does it matter. And none of us would get tired of talking. I can guarantee that. What are the things and how do you integrate that so it does feel like an everyday piece of the brand? So it's not just this thing. It's not a poster on a wall, which is always my go-to make fun of things. How do you integrate that employer brand? How do you make it real? How do you make it so it's part of the living, breathing process of every single employee?
Great. So this is precisely what we wanted to do with this show. And this is the question. So see what you just said? I'm saying that back. What you just said, I'm saying that back to you and Elena.
Elena goes first. 1, 2, 3, not it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I have a couple ideas around this. So I think tactically one. So let's just assume that we've done the research, right? That we've kind of understand the problems and the challenges. I think one of the first ones to think about is what are ways, one, that we are democratizing the tools in the ways that our employees can start sharing their experiences.
So it's not just recruiters on one side and everybody else on the other side?
Yes. So things like it could be smartphones, but it needs to be something that I think more and more employees have access to versus a very select few that have been handpicked.
Yeah, I think the more I hear you guys talk about it, the more obvious it is to me that recruiters can't do this.
Not by themselves.
We can't do it. Basically, because we're locked into this. There's a very specific job when you're in TA. You have to hire heads. So that's your focus. And I didn't really kind of grok this until I'm speaking and starting this conversation with you two. But it seems if EB done correctly needs to be, really emergent from the DNA of the company, and the role of the person doing EB is to expose that and ultimately project it and make it into the project it out into the external marketplace. That isn't necessarily a TA job. That's another function perhaps that needs to sit outside of it. Yeah, it's tangential to it, but right now,
if it was any other industry, we would talk about it in terms of salespeople and marketers, because those brains do not connect. They think of the same idea, bring sales and bring money into the business from two different perspectives. Same thing for what we do. It's about recruiters or salespeople. They create one-to-one connections. They build relationships. They try to understand what the needs are. They try to fill the need. They try to close those deals. Employer brand is not just marketing, it's branding. It's the conceptual stuff, so that when it makes sure that recruiter A and recruiter Z are not talking radically different things and talking about the same company as if they're two different ones.
Okay, addressing John Rose's point there, is there a linear relationship between recruiters, recruitment marketing, and then employer branding? Is there a sequence basically where those departments might actually sit in that kind of in that 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. I have some thoughts in that. It's based on a concept of a maturity model. Is that companies that are just put the butts in the seats, they're kind of old school recruiting, and that's step one. And then you go, gosh, this would be so much easier if we had a shared message that everybody aligned to. Let's try a project. Let's try a pilot. Let's try something. And it's phase 2. And then the pilot works really, really well. And they say, you know what, let's turn this product or this pilot into something more substantial. And that's phase 3. And then they say, okay, how do we activate this stronger so it's more embedded? And that's phase 4. And then they say, great, this all works. How do we make it crazy? That's step 5. Recruiting is in every part of that, but the farther you go along through that process, employer brand and recruitment marketing play different kind of roles. Early on, recruitment marketing, because it's very transactional, because I put X number of ads out, I get Y number of applicants, done.
It's more extreme. It's part of the work.
Yeah.
Versus all of the work. And I would say, actually, if I think about kind of the new recruitment leaders that are kind of coming out the gate, I would say recruiting and recruitment marketing are becoming, I know for some larger companies, there's like actual recruitment marketers. But I'm seeing just more and more young, savvy recruitment leaders who are just doing this inherently because all they've known is social media and using their phones to show and share everything. That at some point, I certainly think that, this is just going to inherently be the role, and that the leaders themselves just will inherently know that. They don't have to even be taught that.
Yeah.
Right now, I think we're kind of going through this switch in kind of generations right now where they've had to differentiate or they've had to think about that differently. Whereas now, I think recruitment marketers, recruiters, especially for kind of the newer leaders, feels one and the same, or at least that's what my experience has told me as I've connected to recruitment leaders.
Yeah, because if you're trying to be a recruiter and competing against someone with a strong employer brand, you're going to lose every single time. Or more to the point, you're going to have to add a 10% salary premium to attract the same quality of talent. A brand attracts and the right kind of people. It connects dots. It's got the power, and I think everybody's starting to see that. And it's just figuring out how do you integrate it into the rest of the processes. So
I think I can give a bit of an explanation as to what Elena just said. So when I started in recruitment 20 years ago, candidates could get virtually no information about an organization, and they had to turn up for an interview in order to see what the office looked like and find out about the company's values. And today they can find out everything. They can find out your inside leg measurement, and they can make decisions on their own. And therefore, you need to nurture them well in advance of them deciding they're looking for opportunities. And that's why we need to adapt to a marketing-led approach within recruitment. And it's absolutely happening. It's happening in most large organizations, although I still do get a bit of sadness when I see some statistics such as Smashfly's State of Recruitment Marketing Report, which showed that 4% of Fortune 500 companies are actually sending anything to the people they might want to hire in the future.
I mean, they spend all this time and money collecting email addresses and then sit on them like a mother hen with an egg. It's sad. It's completely sad.
By the way, you can check out the Smashfly report in the Brainfood Larder. So I've just shared the link there. If you want to check that out, what Adam just said, go ahead and download the report there.
So I think if we talk about employer brand as something that's organic, that is the DNA, and that word's come up a couple times now. How do you, and Elena, I want your thoughts on, because you see it from a very different perspective than I do. How do you present that? How do you activate it? How do you get people to tell more stories? How do you get people to share their ideas that are aligned with that brand? How do you get people to, it's not, if we said there's no money involved, how do you get your employer brand out to the world?
Yeah. Well, I would say a couple of things. One is, I think we can all, it's all the same thing. It all comes from the top. But in many ways, first, it's about, I think the ones who've been doing this well are those who see themselves as vulnerable leaders and understand that their brand is not perfect and that there's things that they can work on, and that what they're trying to do is both show the amazing things of their company, but also the not so great things of why this may not be a fit for you. So Brian Adams, PH Creative, I love when he says, and he's really kind of had this flag around, it's about repel the many to compel the few. Yeah. It's a very simple phrase. And that when it comes to employer brand, that's what we need to think about, that it's not just the amazing things, it's also the leaning into the suck of why this won't work for you. So one, it's having that mindset and approach to that. And once that happens, and once employees feel that they are coming into an environment where their authentic truths can be shared, that's when we can get the groundwork started to start sharing stories. And certainly then there's a myriad of different mediums, you know, whether that's blogs, whether that's photos, whether that is video.
Sidewalk chalk.
But it's something that is from there, again, depending on the medium, giving more and more employees opportunities to share their story. So one of the things that, you know,
let me just interject there, Eleanor. What if there is inconsistency in the story because you might have like disparate departments, let's say, or geographically distributed staff, or you got antagonistic functions?
I love
within,
that,
you know?
Hung Lee. So this is what I love. I'm always going back to the parable of the blind men and the elephant, right? Where it's like you got those 7 blind men, they're all trying to touch an elephant, and one touches the tail, one touches the ear, and they're like, that's a fan, that's a rope. Actually, if you look back, what you realize is that all of those make up the elephant. And in the same way, all of those stories make up the company. The problem that companies have is they want to control one story and one story only, when in reality, our company is made up of multiple different experiences, whether that's around, you know, virtual workforces, whether that's around various departments that have different experiences. All of those are relevant and should be relevant and can be shared. And so I think that, you know, employers that are embracing that and are providing the tools by which all of those disparate departments can share those stories and they're still part of a larger brand are the ones that inevitably, you know, become successful, are the ones that don't necessarily have an issue with pipeline because they've been able to provide opportunities for all of those departments to share their stories.
And the mistake is to try and create a perfectly glossy portrait of the company. That's everything is rosy, everything is lovely, when the statistics show very clearly that a 5-star rating on Glassdoor or a 5-star rating on Yelp is believed to be absolute utter bollocks, right? A 4.3, a 4.4 is believable. Someone's willing to say, hey, it's not perfect, but these are the good things. Completely more believable. But HR and recruiting tends to shy away from anything negative for fear of, well, everything. So they try and shoot for the 5, and that's wrong. The truth is, if you show some of your flaws, if you talk about the imperfections, your opportunities for growth, your chance to make a difference, your chance to get involved, that's where the real power happens. That's where people go, I want to be a part of this.
And let me share if I may, a meaningful story, because this is actually what hit me recently. We are working with the state of Connecticut, who are struggling to hire physicians for the Department of Corrections, right? The prison docs. They are getting
that
0.
Means doctors for prisons, people in the UK.
Sorry.
Doctors for prisons.
Doctors for prisons, all. And they are getting 0 applicants. And there's, you know, and there's a myriad of reasons for that. And I give credit to this story that will be coming out because these doctors both were able to, you know, say, first of all, surprisingly, this is probably the most happiest I've ever been in my professional life. But let's really talk about what really scares folks. One is, okay, we can talk about money, but hey, look, the benefits that we have, I'm not working weekends, I'm working 40-hour weeks. I never would have done that in private practice. They also very much hit on, look, safety and security. I think initially when we think about prisons, we think like, oh my gosh, these prisoners, you know, we could be held hostage here, we can be killed. So the fact that we can kind of talk about, you know what, this is scary for people. We understand that the biases that we have, or the understanding that we have of prisons, is a real thing. But but I want to share from my experience. So they talk through all of that. Many of them saying that I feel more safe and secure in these prisons than I might on a psychiatric ward that's outside of here, where nurses are having to handle everything. Was huge. And the one thing I loved was they said, you know what? If you truly are a medical advocate, these prisoners respect you. They know that you are here to help them and to support them, and that I have never met so many nurses and staff who are committed to these patients. And the guy said, look, I have one job and one job only, and that's to be an advocate, you know, for my patients and to care for my patients. And my patients have one job and one job only, and that's to be a good patient. And regardless if they're prisoners or not, that is the calling that I have in my life. And that's just a perfect example, right, of the story that is both, here's why I am in it, and I've been doing this for the past 15 years, but I can also understand why there are a ton of fears and a ton of biases around this.
So in terms of like getting this back to the practical side, Elena, it sounds like the most obvious thing to do is just to create the confidence in the C team to just do it, because it doesn't seem that hard, right? I mean, you just got to get people talking about their stories. The hard part comes when you try to control the narrative and project something that isn't true. It's like basically it's easier to tell the truth. And if we could boil it down to the brass tacks, that's basically what we're talking about, because lies basically compound and it takes a lot of cognitive energy, and literally no one's got time for that. So it's much better to say, hey, listen, this is how it is, warts and all, as they say in the UK, like it or leave it, more or less. Would you say that's true, Eleanor, or not?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the repel the many to compel the few, right? And I think that's what becomes the big difference with employer branding and what we're trying to do here, is that this is not the glossy corporate brand of, we're so successful and amazing, buy our shit. It's like, this is for you or it's not for you, and let's be truthful about that. And so, yeah, I think, it goes back to that.
You reminded me now of a post I was going to put into, I'm just going to share it in the chat stream there. The Muse has said exactly this: repel talent, employer branding strategy. I was going to put that into Brainfood, but I've shared it into the link there, so you can just consume it there. Okay, go ahead, James. Sorry.
I think part of it is because of recruiting is so tied to HR, and HR is so much based around make a rule, apply a rule equally so that we don't get sued. That's just their mentality. It's how their DNA works. And so they don't want to get into, what do you care about? Oh, let me talk to you about that thing. The relationship building is not where HR's strengths are. And consequently, anything that's negative can be turned into a thing that can blow up. So they just repel all of the thing that's negative and only talk about the positive. That fear comes from this idea of they can't control it, so they don't want to have anything to do with it.
So we've got a question from Simon Irving, which we've got a question from Simon Irving, which is how many companies are actually doing all of this correctly?
I could name a couple. I don't like doing it. What I like to say is that if you can see the employer brand, if it looks like employer brand, they're doing it wrong. They're slapping, lipstick on a pig. They're trying to make something that is obvious and showy. Employer brand should feel invisible. There's the saying, everybody hates marketing, but that's not true. Everybody hates bad marketing. When you hate employer brand, you hate bad employer branding. But if it's just an extension of, hey, this is who we are, and this is why we do what we do, and this is what it is, I think Unilever's doing a great job. I think, strangely, companies like Exxon, which may not be in my political, wheelhouse, I think they do a great job kind of talking about their culture and putting it out in the world. I think whether you like it or not, companies like the way Uber used to be about all dude bro culture-y, it was who they were. It was not anything I'd ever want to have anything to do with, but it was who they were, and they were honest and very clear about that. So everybody walking in should have a good sense of, yep, it's going to be like this. That to me is good employer branding. That's not whether I like it. It's not a matter of whether it works, because it all kind of works, because it's just an expression of you. It's a question of how deeply integrated and how real does it ultimately feel.
Okay, James, you've just touched on something I really want to dive into, because I had this chat with a good friend of mine who I was thinking of bringing onto the show, actually, but she's currently doing her hair. Literally, she's doing this, so I can't pull her out of it. But she is a kind of a big diversity advocate, and she mentioned she was interested to watch your show. And Joe, I think you're on here, and she basically said, look, how do we look at EB in relation to diversity and inclusion? And as you just suggested some things there, which, let's say using Uber as the exemplar of the tech bro culture, etc. We can say on one side, that's great for them because they're being authentic for their employer brand. However, it repels a lot of the people that otherwise we would want to get into the business. Now, are you saying that, hey, listen, that's cool? Or
that's bullshit. They don't want women in that company. They did not want diverse audiences in that company. They didn't want anything of the sort. They built a culture around one single idea and they cultivate it. Sephora, who I love to cite all the time, is the exact opposite. They have 70% female developers, not because women like lipstick who code. It's a company about women, for women, who speak of women, and consequently, they attract women. They don't say no dudes allowed. It's just who they are is so crystal clear that they attract a certain kind of person.
Okay, James, I just want to touch on this. And by the way, I feel like you and I are probably aligned on this, I would say, even though it probably kind of goes a little bit against the mainstream. But I think what you're saying is that it's better for a company to be authentic to themselves, even if that they then forget this broader kind of value system to say, you know
It goes
what,
straight
we
to
need
Elena's
to be
point. It's
very
not about
diverse
attracting everybody.
and very
It's not about getting everybody. It's about getting
Well,
the people who care about you and people who are connected to you. I want Elena to hear talk about this stuff because
right.
this is I am
Let's-
talking
let's-
bollocks. This is Elena's wheelhouse.
No, but let's turn this to one step to where it might become uncomfortable for us. What if we had a business that was politically in a certain direction, let's say, and they wanted to recruit people only of this political kind of allegiance or whatever it is, because that's who they are. Now, if we agree, hey, listen, you know, we should be authentic, we should be this, that, and the other, are we saying that's okay?
Yep.
And are we saying that the market should penalize them if they want to go down this route?
That.
Okay,
not about
the
that.
market will penalize them. Or
I've walked out of interviews because they were playing Fox on the lobby, and I went, it's that kind of company. It's not my thing. Got to go by. And they were just, and I knew that while I could be effective or useful for them, I was never going to be comfortable. I was never one of them, and that's what it's all about. And that I'll let you have that entree into, well, that means Black people should only hire Black people, or Latinx should only hire Latinx. And I think that gets into a very weird space because I don't think that's truly true. But if this is a guy who owns a company who it's all about Fox News all the time, I want to know before I walk in the door. I want to know before I say, yes, I'll take that job, at which point I'm going, oh man, this sucks.
So the worst thing we can do to this guy, the CEO who's, you know, this right-wing guy, whatever it is, worst thing we can do is force that person to become to do some sort of whitewash it, if you like, or blackwash it or whatever, by saying, hey, listen,
if
you
he
need
thinks,
to hire a few folks.
If he thinks he needs to whitewash it, that means he knows he's doing something bad. And he doesn't think he's doing something bad. He thinks he's just being him, and he's just being that thing. And I, as an employee, I'm not about to change him, and I'm certainly not positioned to change him, so I'm not going to try. That's not a fight I can fight. If I'm looking for a job, I want to find a company who's, whether it's their mission statement or ideals align with me, or it's just enough, it's satisfying that, you know, it's close enough that I don't feel like I'm adding to the evil empire or Brexit world. It's about, okay, this is where I am. Great. That's good enough. That's fine. I don't think that guy thought he was doing anything wrong. And I don't think he felt the loss of me not being there because I saw facts and said, no, thanks, I'm good. There's going to be another me who's on the right-hand side of that particular thing. And that person would have been thrilled at that job.
Yeah, you know what? This is a fascinating topic, James, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on it, because it can kind of move into territory that's difficult for us to really be verbal about. Elena, I wonder whether you got any thoughts on this. Adam, I want to bring you in as well, because I think there may be a US-European difference here. I want to explore that.
I mean,
so go ahead.
This is really difficult. I mean, let's just be honest. This is really difficult for enterprise companies to do. They have to please a lot of different people that have many different opinions. So I think it's a lot easier, you know, for small businesses to kind of take on this much more, I think, focused and often, I think, very courageous way of, you know, this is what we're about. This is what we do. I think many larger companies are very much going to struggle with that, and they have, which is why they've been called out, you know, for their hypocrisy on a lot of things. You know, that, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I think folks who have leaned into it, I mean, we think about Chick-fil-A. They're another one who've been, you know, very open and vocal, and they've been one who I think have just been ultimately successful in still being like, all right, yeah, I mean, I get it. You're not going to like us. That's fine. You can boycott us. We're still going to, you know, believe in what we believe. I haven't seen as many companies do that. I will end by saying that, especially right now in this climate, everything you say, don't say, everything you do or don't do is a political statement, period. And companies, large or small, who don't think that they're making a political statement because of their action or inactions is ignorant, right, of what's happening around the world around us. I vehemently believe that it will be small businesses who I think can move the needle in I think having courageous employer brands and having courageous culture, and can prototype and do things that potentially bigger companies will not be able to do.
That's fascinating. And I do think this is where economics and politics are all mixed together. It's impossible to divide that group. I mean, there's times, for instance, when I've been criticized on recruiting Brainfood, for instance, for being too political one way or the other by subscribers saying, I love the recruiting content, but can you tone down your politics? And I'm saying, look, you can't divide it. The fact is, if you care about recruitment, you care about society, you care about sort of organizations, which are a big part of society, work is a big part of life, then, these politics are going to matter. But it's very interesting to hear both of you sort of say that authenticity is the most important thing.
There he is, Ben. There he is.
Even if
he wins the prize. He said it first. Authenticity.
Did I win it? Oh, I didn't realize you were playing
the word of the day.
I hope you enjoy your prize. But you know what? I played a game in Estonia with a friend of mine. We had this we were in a conference and we had to take a political position, which we didn't believe, in order to win the argument. It was one of these Oxford kind of debate things. And I was given the task of defending the right of Nazis to hire Nazis. And that was really tough for me to do. Yes. But I kind of made the case to say, look, if you have a Nazi company or any kind of political position that is over and beyond, the worst thing you can do is force this company to hire someone like me. Because how am I going to thrive in a situation where, I'm going to be considered Untermensch? You know what I'm saying? Just because they have to tick a box on a quota or whatever. If this is culturally a Nazi business, you know what? I think the Nazis should be able to do it. And actually the market will punish them for that. If society cares enough. If the market doesn't punish him for it, you know what? Guess what? That tells you a lot about where we are in society. So anyway, I won that argument, even though everyone thought I was a complete horrendous individual afterwards. But to a certain degree, I kind of agree with it. I think there's a lot of people that have inherent views. They are not politically correct. They're sometimes awful. And what are we going to do? You can kind of force them to cosmetically obey certain types of rules. But I just wonder, should we subject that future employee to this boss? Should we have that situation? Or should we get the market to punish that business, punish or reward that business? Let's face it, maybe sometimes these things actually get rewarded.
But you're asking candidates to vote with their feet, right? You're asking them to vote. And if they were voting for political process, they're supposed to be given enough information in which to make a decision. And to Adam's point earlier, wasn't that long ago that you didn't know jack as you walked in the door. And now it's about how much can I get out there so I can make an informed decision. If you're trying to get people to make an informed decision, do you want to tell them, here's the nice, pretty stuff about us, or that you don't believe that you're just trying to spin and sell, or is it like, hey, look, here's who we are. And, and I've been in conversations and I've been in rooms where it's like, oh, this is a very diverse political bunch. And yeah, I'm on one side and somebody else is on one side, and that's fine. And we can still work together. But the culture wasn't about the politics. And again, there's the other companies where it is about the culture. So you have to kind of present that. Otherwise it's all about expectation setting and meeting.
Yeah, and at the end, it comes down to, is this person a fit for the job, or fit for the company, should we say? Because it's not going to help anybody if you force a hire or kind of get the hire through misinformation or not disclosing important information, because everyone's going to lose there.
Yeah, There's nothing wrong with the path of a candidate screening themselves out, and I think that's the biggest thing is that. This shouldn't just be about, hey, we just want to get them to apply. Sometimes it's about, hey, don't waste our time. By all means, don't waste yours. If you can see that this work isn't for you, hey, you're standing out rain, sleet, shine, or snow, so I think inevitably it's about, it's really about that. It's giving the candidates enough information so that they themselves can make the best decisions for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to end the show, Elena. Let's just bring the. I guess we need to strip back the rhetoric and just expose the reality, and then let people make informed choices. Hopefully, we'll all end up making the right choices in the end. So anyway, listen. everybody, this has been an amazing show. I could definitely talk to you two. I don't know about Adam, but I could definitely talk to you two for a lot longer. So I'd look forward to getting you both back in the show at some other point. It's been a fascinating journey. I've learned a huge amount, particularly about what employer branding really might be. So this has been a massive educational journey for me. So thank you very much for that. Adam, thank you for joining back on the show. I appreciate it. Eleanor, thank you for your time. James, thank you for yours. In the chat, streaming it, also for paying attention to this. This will be live streamed. Already has been live streamed in the Facebook group, and it will also be turned into a podcast which people can listen to. Okay, that's about it for us. Everybody have a good weekend. We'll see you next week for Brainfood Live on Air, episode 37.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Okay, now that everybody's gone, let's have the real conversation.
Yeah, this is the behind the scenes, man.
Yeah. This is where the real stuff happens.
Extra credit. But hey, listen, just as we continue to roll, I just have to say, very interesting. You know, I'm still like trying to process all of this.
We all are. I am too.
You know, what is the ethical position of the company, for instance? You know, is it someone's right to hire who they want? And I know that chafes against D&I, of course it does. But you know, why? I'm thinking small company, of course. Yep. You know, if you're managing a huge enterprise, and obviously your stakeholder base is wider. But you know what? I think US is quite famous for a lot of different smallish type companies that family owned, whatever. You know, they have certain political views. Why would I want to work for that business? I actually don't want to be exposed to that company at all. As a matter of fact.
But that assumes that D&I is about equal everywhere you go, and that's not really going to be the case. If Sephora is 70% women developers, D&I shouldn't be. What we need is more white dudes. That should It's just it's not about hitting quotas. It's not about hitting markets. It's about saying, look, we are open to certain kinds of people, and then what the market. Back to your point, the market's about saying, look, if you are so narrow-minded and narrow-sighted in what you think good talent looks like that you are ignoring great people who are underserved, you're just going to get B-level talent. And those talents who are A-level talents are going to go to a place they feel comfortable. If your ultimate goal is to hire nothing but A-level talent, you should be throwing open the doors to anybody who meets those requirements. Blue, black, white, brown, whatever it is. Gay, straight, man, woman, who cares? That's where D&I should be focusing on, so that because the real worry is that there's a black candidate who is amazing at it, who's simply being turned away because they didn't go to the right school or because they didn't have the resume, doesn't look and sound exactly like everybody else's. That's what D&I should be focusing on first. Not that that's the end all be all, but let's start there to make sure the right people are getting in the door, because that creates that flywheel where you say, look, if we want to attract more black or Latinx or women candidates, it's not about let's go find that woman who works here. Let's put them in the picture. It's about this is the picture, and by the way, there are those people there, and that attracts more of the same. And then you get to say, I'm going to hire the people based on talent.
You know what? We should have this talk.
Let's get torn. Let's get torn in this.
Yeah, I'd love to get torn in there. We should have a D&I show. I've realized actually we probably haven't covered D&I in this way in Brainfood Live, so we'll make sure we get that in there. But anyway, James, listen, I got to cut you off because you have got your day to get on with. Thank you very much for joining the show, man. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, always a pleasure.
And hopefully we'll get the chance to chat soon, dude.
Oh yeah, always. Bye, everybody.